Pay close attention to what you are about to hear. Because this single sentence cost the man who said it more than most people will ever understand.
That I'm not part of the club.
That voice belongs to Ice Cube, one of the most fearless figures in the entire history of American entertainment. And that one sentence, said plainly, without drama, without performance, is the reason the most powerful doors in Hollywood have been closed to him for decades. Now here is what nobody in mainstream media wants you to connect. Ice Cube's warnings about Hollywood's gatekeepers. The Epstein files naming Oprah Winfrey. The missing girls at her school in South Africa. The documented friendships with Harvey Weinstein, Diddy, and R. Kelly. This is not a collection of rumors. This is a pattern. And today we are pulling every single thread.
Oprah is limited in the context of the files, but there is clear collusion between Oprah and Jeffrey Epstein.
Stay locked in, because once you see this pattern fully assembled, you will not be able to look at any of these names the same way again. Before we go any further, you need to understand exactly who Ice Cube is. Because this entire story only carries its full weight when you understand the size of the man delivering the warning. O'Shea Jackson grew up in South Central Los Angeles at a time when that zip code was effectively a war zone. He turned everything he witnessed and survived into lyrics. And by the time he was a teenager, he was rewriting the rules of American music. NWA did not just reshape rap. They alarmed the government. The FBI literally sent a formal letter to their record label expressing concern about the content of their music. The Federal Bureau of Investigation was troubled by a group of teenagers from Compton. That is the level of impact. And then Cube expanded. Films, produced projects, built businesses entirely outside the traditional Hollywood machine, launched the Big Three basketball league, giving veteran NBA players a legitimate stage. Empire after empire, built on his own terms, accountable to no one inside the system. That independence is precisely why he became a target. Because in Hollywood, self-sufficiency outside the machine is not celebrated. It is punished.
Part of the herd. I'm not part of the go along to get along gang, so to speak. So, I'm an outsider.
The outsider. That is the label they gave him. But when you look at what he was being kept out of, you start to wonder whether outsider is not actually the safest place to be. He tried The View, turned away. He tried Oprah's platform, locked out. Every time he approached the mainstream media apparatus, the door closed. And nobody could ever give him a direct answer as to why.
I tried to go on The View. They didn't have me on The View.
Why?
Well, a few of the guests just really didn't like where I was coming from. So, or a few of the hosts, I mean. So that's what I was told by the producers.
He produced Barbershop, one of the most beloved black ensemble films of the 2000s. The entire cast went on Oprah. Ice Cube, the producer, the creative force behind the entire project, was not invited. He created a groundbreaking show called Black White. The cast went on. Ice Cube, not invited. When the same door keeps closing on the same person, you have to ask who is holding the handle from the other side.
I'm talking about the club of gatekeepers that we all got to deal with. You know who they are, and they definitely know who they are.
He does not name every name. He does not have to. Anyone who has ever tried to exist in the entertainment industry outside the structures they have built already knows exactly who he is describing. These are the people who determine who gets a platform and who gets buried, who gets promoted and who gets labeled difficult, who receives a second chance and whose career quietly disappears after they say the wrong thing.
What makes them so mad is when you don't want to be a part of their fucking club. That pisses them off.
Think about that for a moment. Not attacking them, not going to the press, not filing a lawsuit, simply declining to participate, saying no, I do not want in. That alone is enough to trigger their anger. And here is why that matters. If the club was purely about networking and career opportunity, a refusal would cost you nothing more than access. But if membership carries conditions, expectations, loyalty requirements, things you are required to remain silent about, then a refusal is a direct threat. Because someone who refuses the deal also refuses the silence that comes with it. Now here is where the Epstein files enter the frame. Jeffrey Epstein did not operate as a lone predator. He functioned as a hub, a central node in a network. A man who accumulated powerful people the same way others accumulate possessions. And the mechanism he used was elegant in its simplicity. He made proximity to him feel like a privilege. Being connected to his circles meant you were powerful. Being in his files meant you mattered.
So like if you were on the scene and you were powerful, like to be honest, like if you're not in those files, it would be an insult because it just means that you were a bit of a loser.
Loser. If you were not in Epstein's files, you were a loser. That was the mentality of the world these people operated inside. And now ask yourself, is that so different from what Ice Cube is describing? A club so exclusive that not being admitted is itself a form of punishment. A world where access to the right rooms and the right people defines your entire standing. The gatekeepers Ice Cube describes and the network Epstein built are not two separate stories. They are describing the same architecture of power from two different vantage points. Now let's talk about the name that keeps appearing at the intersection of all of this. Oprah Winfrey. And before anyone draws premature conclusions, we are not here to convict anyone. We are here to follow documented connections, public statements, and a pattern that has become genuinely difficult to dismiss. Being on a contact list does not make anyone guilty of anything. We have to be precise about that. But it does confirm the existence of a documented relationship between Oprah Winfrey and Jeffrey Epstein. And here is where it becomes significantly harder to wave away. Because there is an actual email in the released documents. A specific real piece of correspondence that lays out direct coordination between Epstein, Oprah, and Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York.
Sarah sent Epstein an email saying, I want to make sure you're aware I'm going on Oprah tomorrow, and she is going to ask me about my debts, the entrapment of last year, and the press about you in January. It'll be quick and at the top of the show, all of 10 seconds, a very small piece. However, I just wanted to make sure that you are aware of this and seek your advice on how you want me to answer.
Read that again carefully. Sarah Ferguson is scheduled to appear on Oprah's show. And before she goes on, she emails Jeffrey Epstein asking him how he wants her to respond to questions about him on Oprah's platform. And Epstein responded. He drafted the answer she should deliver. He coached her on how to handle the interview. And then she went on and delivered it.
This is straight up collusion. This is Oprah passing through a message to Epstein.
Whether she was complicit or simply used, we cannot say with certainty. But the platform was used. And the question of whether she knew remains completely unanswered. And here is where it gets even harder to look away. Because at the exact same time this coordination with Epstein was occurring, another scandal was building around Oprah's name. One that almost nobody in the mainstream press gave the attention it deserved. In 2007, Oprah Winfrey launched what was celebrated as one of the most significant philanthropic initiatives of her career. The Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls in South Africa. A $40 million investment in the futures of underprivileged young women. A legacy project, something the world could point to as evidence of real, meaningful impact. Oprah responded publicly. She said she was devastated. She encouraged any girls who had genuinely been harmed to come forward. She positioned herself as the one demanding accountability.
And I spoke to all the girls personally, and I encouraged all of them, any of them who had actually been harmed, to please come forward.
And then, following Oprah's own internal investigation, the matron who had been charged walked free. Critics alleged that the investigation was structured not to uncover the truth, but to protect the institution's reputation. A former headmistress actually filed a defamation lawsuit against Oprah, claiming that Winfrey's public statements implied the headmistress had knowledge of the abuse and had deliberately covered it up. But there is an even darker layer to this story. one that the mainstream coverage almost entirely ignored. Reports began circulating, from voices who had been following the school since its opening, about girls who had gone missing from among the graduating classes.
All of the girls went missing that was at that school graduating class and nobody is talking about it? I tell you why. Because you guys are protected and I don't appreciate it. I want you guys tap in, tune in, comment. If you guys know about it, talk about it, spread the word, share this. Those girls in Africa went missing. That was at Oprah's school, Oprah Winfrey. Where were these girls at? Has anybody found them? Why is there not enough coverage on this?
That question has never been answered at scale. It created a brief wave of online attention and then it was gone. No comprehensive follow-up. No investigation broadcast at any major platform. No names. No outcomes. And when you lay that silence against what the Epstein files reveal about how predatory networks actually function, the use of elite-adjacent institutions, the pattern of vulnerable young people in controlled environments, the infrastructure of access and silence, the silence around this story becomes its own form of evidence. Now here is the part of this story where coincidence stops being a reasonable explanation. 'Cause this is not one association. This is not two. This is a pattern that runs across multiple predators, multiple decades, and the same recurring name at the center of all of it. Harvey Weinstein. 4 decades the most powerful producer in Hollywood. Celebrated. Awarded. The kind of man who could reshape a career with a single phone call. Oprah Winfrey was publicly photographed embracing him at industry events. She appeared alongside him at gatherings where his name on the marquee guaranteed a room full of the most powerful people in entertainment. And then the walls came down. Dozens of women came forward. The story that everyone in Hollywood had apparently known about for years finally broke open. And everyone who had been standing next to Harvey suddenly had somewhere else to be. That was not an internet troll. That was a man who had been on her show. Who had sat across from her. Who had been inside that world. And he was saying clearly and publicly that the people celebrating Oprah as a champion of survivors were being misled. Then there is R. Kelly. The case that took 2 full decades of survivor testimony and relentless advocacy to finally crack open. Oprah had an interview with 2 of his accusers. She had the story. She had the platform. She had everything she needed. And then, for reasons that have never been publicly explained, the interview never aired. The footage sat on a hard drive somewhere. And R. Kelly kept operating. And Diddy, now facing serious federal charges. Oprah had a documented, publicly visible friendly relationship with Sean Combs. Photographed with him. Present at his events. Moving in the same circles. Weinstein, Kelly, Combs, Epstein through the Sarah Ferguson coordination. That is not a coincidence. That is not an unlucky pattern of social proximity. That is a sequence that demands examination. And while all of this was unfolding behind the gilded curtain, real people were having their careers ended. Real artists, real women, real black voices that the industry claimed to celebrate. Monique won an Academy Award. Let that sit for a moment. She won an Oscar for Precious. One of the most raw, powerful, devastating performances of the 2000s. That should have been a launching pad. An open door. The beginning of a long and celebrated career at the highest level of the industry. Instead, it became the precise moment her career was quietly placed on ice. She says she was blacklisted. And she does not hesitate to name exactly who was responsible.
Got labeled as difficult because I said one word, and that was no. Now, I said no to some very powerful people. What Tyler Perry showed me, Lee Daniels, Oprah Winfrey, and Lionsgate. When you don't do what we ask you to do, we'll take your livelihood.
When you don't do what we ask you to do, we will take your livelihood. Not, we will be disappointed. Not, we will move on. We will take your livelihood. That is not the language of a disappointed collaborator. That is the language of a threat. And Monique says it came directly from Oprah Winfrey. And it did not stop at professional consequences. Monique's grievance against Oprah is deeply personal. She had shared private details of her life with Winfrey. Her estrangement from her mother, her pain, her wounds. And she says that vulnerability was used against her. Oprah brought her mother onto the show without warning, without permission. The most private, painful parts of a Monique's story were turned into content.
She never said my mother was coming on that show. Because had Oprah Winfrey said, I'm gonna have your mother, I would have said, shut it down.
And then there is The Color Purple, Oprah's most recent major production. Taraji P. Henson came forward and publicly discussed the pay disparity on that film. Black actresses on a project that Oprah co-produced being paid significantly less than their counterparts in comparable roles. Being asked to drive themselves to set. Being treated as less than.
Whenever I heard there was an issue or there was a problem with the cars or there was a problem with the food, I would step in and do whatever I could to make it work.
She acknowledged there were problems. She acknowledged having to intervene, which means the problems were real and documented. And the star of the film was publicly discussing pay inequity on a project produced by the woman who has spent 30 years positioning herself as the definitive champion of black women in America. Monique had a precise name for the role Oprah was occupying in this power structure.
Called her the help.
Yes.
And so I can see how that could be a little contradictory in saying, I love my sister, she's been dope, but she's been the help for all these years.
Yeah.
The help. Someone who facilitates the requirements of those above them while maintaining the outward appearance of leadership. That is one of the most cutting descriptions in this entire story. Because it reframes everything. It means Oprah may not be at the top of this system. She may be its most visible and most palatable face. The one who makes the machine feel acceptable, who gives it a human dimension, who provides cover for the people operating above her. Now let's talk about what Epstein was about to do before he died. Because this is the part of the story that connects everything else. Jeffrey Epstein was in federal custody. He was facing charges that carried decades in prison. And according to documentation that has since become public, his legal team was in active negotiations with federal prosecutors about the possibility of cooperation, about naming names, about providing testimony that, by every account from people close to the case, would have reached into the highest levels of global power.
According to an FBI record, Epstein was possibly about to cooperate with the feds right before he died. That on July 29, 2019, his lawyers and the federal prosecutors in this case, in very general terms, discussed the possibility of a resolution of the case and the possibility of the defendant's cooperation. Cooperation's key.
He was about to name everyone, and then he was gone. The surveillance cameras at the facility malfunctioned. The guards assigned to check on him fell asleep. A man in federal protective custody, carrying what was arguably the most sensitive information in the world, died in his cell before he could speak. His death was officially ruled a suicide. Virtually no one close to the case believes that ruling. Ice Cube is not the only one who saw what that silence meant. He is simply the one who kept talking after everyone told him to stop. Dave Chappelle walked away from a $50 million deal at the absolute peak of his career. And the media coverage at the time was almost designed to make you dismiss it. They said he had a breakdown. They said he cracked under the pressure of success. They laughed at him. And for years that narrative held. Dave Chappelle was unstable. Dave Chappelle could not handle it. Dave Chappelle lost his mind. But Dave Chappelle told us exactly what happened, in his own words.
I feel like in a lot of instances, I was deliberately being put through stress.
And they do what's called a salt trap. I didn't know this. Apparently baboons love salt.
Okay.
So they put a lump of salt in a hole, and they wait for the baboon. The baboon comes, sticks his hand in the hole, grabs the salt makes his hand bigger, and he's trapped. He can't get his hand out. Now, if he's smart, all he does is let go of the salt. Baboon doesn't want to let go of the salt. Then the bushman just comes, takes the baboon, throws him in the cage, and gives him all the salt he wants. And then the baboon gets thirsty, and in that analogy, I felt like the baboon.
The salt trap. That is what the $50 million deal was. That is what every massive contract in Hollywood is for the right kind of person. Presents as reward. Presents as opportunity. But it arrives with invisible terms attached. Stay silent. Stay compliant. Look away from what we need you to look away from. And if you reach in and grab the money, you grab the trap along with it. Chappelle let go. Ice Cube refused to reach in at all, and both of them paid a price. Both were labeled. Both were mocked. Both watched the doors close around them.
What am I going to do to deal with these gatekeepers? Well, what I'm going to do is go on the Gatekeepers podcast tour. And I'm going to go talk to everybody, and get a chance to get my message out to the people.
He is not done. Ice Cube is not sitting down and going quiet. He is deliberately and systematically going around every gatekeeper that tried to shut him out. Every platform that said no, he is finding another door and walking through it. Let me tell you what all of this looks like when you zoom all the way out. Ice Cube refused to join the club, not because he lacked access, not because he lacked talent or influence or the commercial weight to demand a seat at the table, but because he understood what membership required. And he refused those requirements. That refusal has cost him platform after platform, invitation after invitation for decades. And his warnings about who the gatekeepers are and what they protect have been dismissed, mocked, and buried, until the files started dropping. Oprah Winfrey's name appears in the Epstein documents, contact list, correspondence, a documented, specific email coordination between Epstein and a guest on her own show, where Epstein drafted the answers that guest would deliver about him on Oprah's platform. Her school in South Africa was the site of documented abuse involving girls as young as 13. Multiple girls reportedly went missing from graduating classes. That story was briefly raised and then systematically buried. Harvey Weinstein was convicted of rape and sexual assault. R. Kelly was convicted of sex trafficking. Diddy is facing federal charges. All three had documented, publicly visible, warm relationships with Oprah Winfrey across years of public life. An interview with two of R. Kelly's accusers was recorded and never aired. The footage exists somewhere. The decision not to broadcast it was made by someone. Monique won an Oscar and was blacklisted. She named Oprah directly. She described being threatened, not disappointed, not passed over. Threatened with the destruction of her livelihood for saying no. Dave Chappelle described being deliberately subjected to stress and walked away from $50 million rather than accept the conditions attached to it. Both of them described the same machine from the inside. Epstein was in active negotiations to cooperate with federal prosecutors when he died. He was going to name names. The cameras in his facility malfunctioned. The guards fell asleep. He died in federal custody before he could say a single word in open court. His death was ruled a suicide. Virtually nobody with direct knowledge of the case accepts that ruling. Ice Cube's warning was not paranoia. It was not conspiracy. It was not the rambling of a man who could not handle success. It was a preview, delivered by a man who had been inside those rooms, who had seen the machinery, and who chose to walk away from it rather than become part of what it required him to be. And we are living in the sequel right now. If this opened your eyes, share it, before it gets buried, because the gatekeepers are still operating. The club is still running. And the people whose names are in those sealed files are still on your screen every day. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We are not done here. Not even close.